Do you think the world is more corrupt, or do you think there's just more transparency? Like the media, for example. I had this debate with Joe Rogan because I was saying, my parents have a very hard time believing that legacy media could have nefarious intentions or could be giving you false truths. And I said, well, I think when they were growing up, it was different. And he's like, I don't agree. I think we just didn't know because there wasn't new media. What is your opinion on it?
The pressures were very different 50 years ago because the elites were very different. So it was before the great sorting. So people lived next door to people who voted differently from them. And it would have been considered déclassé to read a newspaper that your neighbor, the Republican, couldn't possibly read because it would be too insulting to them, the way the New York Times is today, right? The New York Times, 91% of its readership, probably more by now, is Democrats because it's just so insulting to the intelligence of conservatives to see themselves portrayed in that light.
Of
I mean,
course.
it's wrong and it gets a lot of stuff wrong, but it's too insulting. So that would have been considered like beneath an elite 50 years ago who goes to play squash with their Republican friend and they want to be able to talk about the news in a way that sounds intelligent or what have you.
Right.
You had most journalism back then was local journalism, and local journalism existed in a context of you would have a town and they'd have one paper. So the guy who ran the paper, owned the paper, he could let his journalists, tack left, following their natural inclinations to be, activists, but he would lose 50% of the potential
Wow.
readers. Of course, they weren't going to do that.
Right.
They were like, no, you guys have to report the news straight, and we have to have a balanced op-ed page that has both sides so that I can get every single reader in this town to read my paper. And basically, both of those things fell apart. The elites became very insular and much wealthier and much more diffuse in their wealth. So the professional class became rich and part of the top 10% and began to see their wealth as deserved because they had these fancy educations. So they developed a contempt for the other side, for Republicans and for working class people, which they used to justify policy that further enriched them. And meanwhile, the pressures of digital media meant that you were measuring success not in terms of getting the widest amount of people in your town to read your paper,
Right.
but the most extreme people because they are the most engaged. And as you know from running a digital media shop, you measure success based on engagement.
Ugh,
So
it's
the New York
brutal.
Times and
Yes.
CNN want the most extreme lefties as their viewers, both
Got it.
because they're now the richest people in America and also because they're most engaged. That's how media makes its money now. So I think it has gotten much more extreme, but I'm glad that that's visible now. It used to be that corporate interests were very much at play. And now it's sort of like you have each interest group with its media outlets, although Qatar funds a lot of them, and basically everybody can find the media that speaks to them. And I think it's kind of working out, especially now with new media and podcasts,
Okay.
people can really, you don't really need to know that much about the news is the truth. And you just don't need that much
I
information.
feel like we
So I think it's going to be
do.
okay.
I feel like we do, and that's why I treasure your voice so much. Because I
That's
feel like,
very
one of the
kind.
reasons, and I'll wrap on this thought. One of the reasons that I personally am so enraged is really the right word about Jake Tapper in his book is because I don't think that he was negligent or incompetent, which by the way is unacceptable, but nevertheless, I think he was ideologically gatekeeping. I think that he was putting out propaganda, not news. And I think that this is a huge part of the problem why these conspiracies have been allowed to persist, whether it was the COVID lab leak or it was the friggin' Hunter Biden laptop or it was Biden's mental acuity. Where does it stop? And my other huge concern is that when I see people fighting and divided, when we're not going after the real bad guys, and the globalists and all of this, the people that are pulling the strings, and I'll give you this analogy. Someone posted this and it was like, okay, you've got red ants in a jar and black ants in a jar and they're all getting along great until someone shakes the jar. I feel like the propaganda is shaking the jar and then the red ants and the black ants end up fighting. That is one of the reasons that I am so outraged about what Jake Tapper did. I think he has a sacred responsibility to give honest information so people can make powerful decisions and find common ground, and to hold power accountable, as you have said so eloquently, which is why I think that having access to the news is so important and why I treasure your voice. So you get the last thoughts on this one.
I'll punt on Jake Tapper because he booked me on his show today and then canceled me. So I feel like either if I say nice things or if I say bad things, either way, it's going to reflect poorly and no one will take me seriously or believe me.
Okay.
I will say this, Jillian, and thank you so much for having me. This has been an honor and a thrill.
Oh my gosh, thank you for being
here.
So
grateful to you. We're not actually fighting. We're actually getting more and more unified as a nation. To me, the polarization narrative is just a myth. I think only the elites are polarized. But if you go out into the country, you will find in every city in America, somebody working side by side, praying side by side, picking up children side by side with people they disagree with politically, and they just could not care less. And so I actually think that, despite the best efforts of the media to polarize us, to put money in their own pockets, the American people are just too good and too smart and too moderate and too loving and caring and tolerant to believe it. And so I'm a real polarization skeptic. I just think that if you bet on the American people, you will always win. And if you bet against them, you will always lose. And that is what our elites have done. And now they're losing.
Thank you so much. You're wonderful. I have loved every second of this. Where can people get more from? You're everywhere. Where do we go to get more?
I'm on Twitter, although I don't spend a lot of time there. People will tell me like, "Oh wow, you're really getting piled on," and I'll have no idea because I really don't read my mentions at all.
Don't read
but
it.
I read my DMs. I read the messages on Instagram as well. People send me the most beautiful notes, and it means so much to me. And I wish I could write back to every single person, but I do try to read them all. And people write to me from all over the country talking about, just what their lives are like. And I'm unbelievably grateful. When I was defending the tariffs, like I was one of the only people who was willing to defend them. I guess that sort of says something about me, but even people who are like pro-Trump didn't like them. And I was like, no, these are great. And people would write to me, people who really did not have two pennies to rub together and be like, I am willing to make this sacrifice for my nation and for my children and for the future of this country. People who are so patriotic and willing to sacrifice so much more than the people who have the most in this country and in this world will ever be asked to do. So I'm on Instagram at Batya US, and I'm on Twitter at Ungar-Sargon, and I have a book coming out next year, and hopefully I'll come back and talk to you about it. I'm sure we'll.
Oh my God, you have an open door. You are you. I hold you as in as high of a regard and esteem
it's
as
very
one
mutual.
could. All right, go and deal with Jake Tapper. I cannot wait to watch. Thank you for being here, sweetheart.
God bless you. Thank you for everything, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. And make sure to let me know what guests you want to see on in the future.